Don't forget to like, subscribe and share the videos.
The Green Finance Challenge. See, we have made more number of pledges as well as commitment in the international arena. The global countries are pitching for increased number of commitments in the arena, but the major problem which the developing countries are facing is the implementation of those pledges. If the implementation is need to take place, means finance need to be ensured, which the developing countries as well as more underdeveloped countries could not able to afford, because they have a huge problem of pulling out of most of their people out of the poverty. Such kind of task they are having, and if they wanted to make enhanced strides in the climate change mitigation activity, means they need finance, which the developed countries are not in a position to provide to the developing countries. So this is what the tussle has been going out, and the article which has came today is related to the mobilization of the private finance along with the public sector finance in climate financing. See, in the recent June month, the Paris Pact has been made in the France, where hundreds of countries as well as other representatives from private organization has participated in it. And what the Paris Pact has said is that no country should choose between fighting for planet and fighting the poverty. Both should go hand in hand. So if both the process should go hand in hand, means then the developing countries and the underdeveloped countries should be given with finance, adequate finance to manage this. So the government could not only be able to finance those climate activities. The private funds should also be mobilized. That is why India is heavily pitching that the reforms should be made in the World Banks and other multilateral institutions, so that the rules as well as the regulations will be reoriented in a way which suits the current financing needs. Like in the case of financing for climate mitigation activities, and then achieving the goals of sustainable development goals by the underdeveloped as well as developing countries. And then what the author has said is that apart from the public investment, the private investment should also be mobilized, which in turn will be enabling all the countries to move towards the climate mitigation activities with greater march. So she has made some suggestions. Let's look into each of them. First, what she has said is that there need to be review of global vertical climate fund, so that we could able to know the kind of fund that has been present across the globe. What percentage of fund that has been present with the public sectors, and what percentage of fund that could be mobilized from the private sector for the climate mitigation activities. Secondly, the review of post 2008 financial regulations need to be made. Why? Because after 2008, because of the recession and the resultant economic slowdown that has happened across global, there was tightening of rules and regulation has taken place, because of which the private investments could not be mobilized. So if there is any kind of tightening of rules, means it will hinder the private people to invest in the particular areas. Such kind of thing only is happening post 2008 scenario, which in the post 2008 financial institutions rules and regulation scenarios need to be again reviewed, revamped, and must be eased, so that it will be enabling us to mobilize the private investment in the climate mitigation activity. Thirdly, the credit rating agency should also be involved in the multilateral banks reforming process. Why? Because if the multilateral banks have reformed themselves and they are in a position to provide loans with the innovative approach to the developing countries, means the credit rating agencies must understand that, need to understand that this credit which the multilateral banks is going to give for the developing countries is for the overall goodness, and they should be in a position to accommodate those kind of credits being given by the multilateral banks rather than punishing them with the lower rating. As a result, if the credit rating agency are giving lower rating so to the multilateral banks for the climate related finance means, then next time the multilateral banks will not be giving the climate related finance to the developing countries, so that the credit rating agencies should also be sensitized with the upcoming reforms that is going to take place in the multilateral banks. And then there should be enhancement in the green finance framework. And fifth, the government should not exonerate from the debt vulnerabilities that is happening in the developing countries. As we all know, the Sri Lanka, Pakistan, as well as the Bangladesh and many other developing as well as underdeveloped countries are facing the debt crisis, which the creditor countries, those countries, those who are providing creditors, should mostly they must be developed countries are in a position to get developed. Such kind of countries should take responsibilities to ensure that the developing countries does not fall in the debt trap of those of the credit given by them, so that they could be able to make a positive strides in their march towards the climate mitigation activities. So if the country is facing debt vulnerability means surely the private investors will be hesitating to invest in the climate mitigation activities that is happening in those countries. So such kind of things should not be happen. The creditor countries should be seeing the larger pictures rather than making the developing countries to fall in the debt trap. These are all the suggestions being given by the author to enhance the private credit facilities in the climate financing across the globe. So how the news is being related to the examination is, under prelims it is related to general issues and environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change. Similarly, under mains GS paper 3 environment, it is related to conservation, environmental pollution degradation and environmental impact assessment. Okay, let's look into the historical aspect of United Nations Framework for Convention on Climate Change, which is the only convention to lead the activities towards the climate related mitigation activities across the globe, and it was introduced in 1992 Earth Summit. And to implement the convention, the Kyoto Protocol has been invented in 1997. So after getting the enough number of ratification by the countries, it entered into force in 2005. But in that Kyoto Protocol, the developed countries need to cut the emission by 5% by 2012 with taking 1990 as the base level. See, the developed countries has higher responsibility in the Kyoto Protocol because of the common but differentiated responsibility principle that has been followed in Kyoto Protocol and then in the United Nations Framework for Convention on Climate Change. In that, the countries has been divided into three types. One is Annex 1 countries, Annex 2 countries and then non-Annex countries. In that, the Annex 1 as well as the Annex 2 countries are the developed countries. They must take the responsibilities to invest in the non-Annex country, which is mostly developing as well as underdeveloped countries, to invest in the non-Annex country so that the carbon footprint or the climate related incidents that has been happening in the underdeveloping countries will be reduced, and they could also be able to access the fund for their climate mitigation activities through this division. And the period for the first Kyoto Protocol got ended during 2012, and we must be noting it out that US doesn't sign the Kyoto Protocol, and Canada also withdrew from Kyoto Protocol since 2012. And then during 2012, the Kyoto Protocol the amendment was made in the protocol because of the changing scenarios, and then the other economic impact that has been happening post 2008. There need to be changes in the targets as well as the changes in the country's economic development, so that the realigning the countries according to their developing activities in the Annex 1, Annex 2 and non-Annex countries should be made. For that, the Doha Amendment was introduced in 2012, but it was flop. Why? Because the Doha Amendment was initially proposed for the period of 8 years, that is 2012 to 2020. But until 2019, it did not get implemented. Why? Because only 120 plus country, a mere of 120 plus country only ratified the Doha Amendment. If the ratification needed to be passed, means nearly 140 plus country needed to ratify those amendments, which has not happened until now. So the Doha Amendment is completely flop. And this steps led to 2015's Paris deal, which is the historical deal where the global countries committed to keep the global temperature well below the 2 degrees Celsius. And during 2018, if the Paris deal has been made, and if it is need to be implemented, means there need to be certain rules and regulations. Such rule book was formed during 2018 Katowice summit, which took place in Poland, which finalized the rule book. And then in 2021, India made a pledge in the Conference of Parties to reach the net zero carbon emission by 2070, along with 4 other targets being set under the Panchamrit target. And then because of the funding requirement and the long negotiation that has happened for the past 2 decades between developing as well as developed countries, the last year's summit, 2022 summit, led to formation of loss and damage fund for the vulnerable countries. Right now, the fund has been created. How it is going to be implemented, overall the party is going to be benefited by it, and overall the countries or the members going to administer the loss and damage fund is not known until now, and it will be known in the upcoming climate summit and the upcoming negotiations between the countries. Okay, let's have a look into the Green Climate Fund, which was created by Conference of Parties in 2010 to specifically fund the climate related activities in the developing countries. And then the fund is governed by the board, which is appointed by the Conference of Party, and the board is fully accountable to the Conference of Party, and their functioning will be regulated by the Conference of Party itself. So this is what the Green Climate Fund is about, but it has not shown any kind of positive signs until now. So what need to be studied further is, we should know about what is the India's energy mix and what is the tussle that is going on between the Middle East country as well as the Western country in terms of phasing down the coal. There is a difference between phasing down and phase out. What is the difference between them? Which country is supporting phasing down and which country is supporting the phasing out clause in the climate change summit or the outcome book? We should be aware of it. Secondly, we should also know about the recently introduced Indian carbon market. Thirdly, we should also be aware of the schemes, project being implemented by the government of India for transitioning the economy from fossil fuel based economy to the non-fossil fuel based economy, so that the climate change related impact could be reduced, and it will be leading to reduction of the carbon footprint that is taking place in Indian economy. So this is what the details in relation to mobilization of the private funds as well as the historical aspect of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Green Climate Fund is about.